Hi, and welcome to another Paul and Ted's Talk Time. I'm Ted, this is Paul. And today we're talking about the definition of success. Well, I guess most people, Paul, right, consider career, money, success. Is that how they equate it?
I'm not so sure if it's quite as cut and dry as that, but I'm sure that would go in the mix for the mainstream, wouldn't it?
For example, I mean, your friends from school. I mean, let's say you had a reunion, 150 years on, and all your mates from high school were there, and they'd ask you, "Hey, what you doing?" And would they be asking you that as a sort of to compare themselves to you?
In a very parochial way, yeah. I think that kind of mentality exists for sure. It's keeping up with the Joneses, isn't it? Scenario.
Yeah.
But as a measure of success, it's probably the worst possible one on the list, isn't it?
But don't we pick our own? Don't we pick our own? We say, well, I've never worked in my life, and therefore I'm a success because I haven't wasted all that time doing a job or something along those lines. Or I'm a success in another way. I have a sort of a creative talent or something, or I mean, there's 100 ways to sort of.
Well, what are the measures of success? Happiness.
Happiness. Yep.
Security.
Yeah. Finance. Yeah.
Love. Feeling love.
Feeling loved. Yeah. Feeling loved.
Yeah.
Okay. Procreation, rearing a family, there has to be some sense of satisfaction there.
Yeah.
Well, let's look at the other way. Let's look at failure. We'll probably have
we'll be good at that.
A better handle on that. I mean, where did it all go wrong? I mean, underachieving. Doesn't?
Okay. Well, what? Okay. So if we're going to look at failure, we can look at the flip side as being success, right?
Okay, so let's say we talk to somebody, and then we'll take ourselves out of the frame here, and we'll say to somebody, well, how's it been? Let's say you went to your high school reunion, and you met a guy, and you said, well, Jack, how's it going, man? You said, well, basically, I've underachieved. How would he be able to compensate that by saying what? What would he be able to say? But I've done this. As if to say, well, I haven't done well in work or career.
He's not going to say I've underachieved. He's going to focus on what he's achieved.
Yeah, okay. So therefore we're kind of picking what we sense to be our best achievement and focusing on that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Do you think that there is a case to be answered for in the sense that those who are not conventional, those who don't fall into the mainstream, are more likely to be the more successful? For example, those who go off traveling around the world on a yacht, they say, right, I'm not having any more.
Well, let's use your happiness factor.
Okay.
Yeah. Happiness. I mean, where are you putting that in the mix? People will say, well, I don't need to be happy. What I need is money to be able to do this. And other people will say, I'm not interested in the money. I just want to be happy. I want to wake up in the morning and be happy.
Yeah, well, it gets back to this idea that success is very much an individual, self-defined thing, isn't it?
Very much so, yeah. But let's take the components, because you started with this just now, and then let's take the other things. We can say finance, then career, not necessarily.
Well, let me zoom in on that for a minute, okay? Let me zoom in on the finance. And we're going to be covering this in our next video. Is being financially.
Yeah. Does money equal happiness? That's our next video, and it's a really good one, but it's a topic in itself.
But if you have a lot of money, or not you, but if we were to ask a pool of people had a lot of money, would they all say they were successful?
Yeah, I think they would. I think they would, because that would tick their box. I think you work backwards, don't you? You do something good and say, well, I've been a success not because I worked hard or I was successful in a job, because I wasn't successful in a job and I never had a career, but I did do this. I sailed around the world.
So it's about values, isn't it? What people value,
Yeah,
and people value money for sure.
yeah, but not everybody by a long stretch, especially those who don't have it.
And you know, I mean, I was watching a program the other day about rich kids
Mm.
and very affluent people, and they a lot of them were saying, you know, you've got it all wrong here. It doesn't necessarily equal happiness, you know. Although that's our next topic, but
But it's tied in, isn't it?
I think mainstream society is definitely going to look at financial affluence as a barometer of success for sure.
Okay, let's look at a guy who died yesterday or day before, Colin Powell. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, the
Okay,
American.
now if you look at I looked at the Wikipedia and you know his career path and all the things he did, and he was the first black Secretary of State or something, and he had this huge career in the army. I mean, basically a success story, you could say. You know, and 84 years old when he died, so it wasn't cut short his life. He led a full life. I mean, that would be your quintessential idea of a successful person, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he ticks all the boxes
exactly,
to satiate the mainstream conventional upbringing.
You know, long marriage. You know, well brought up kids educated well, kids doing well. You know, good career. I mean, just about everything.
Yeah, but again, you know, you only have to scratch the surface on these cases, and
it all comes tumbling down.
It's very hard to penetrate, but because part of the success story is masking and holding up this almost at times facade is the word, and it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I'm hazarding a guess here that there are so many cases like that out there where you could look at them and they tick the boxes. But scrape away the veneer, the facade, and get to the real, you know, inside story, so to speak. Is it really?
So if you were going to be simplistic, you could say, well, everybody has success and failure in their lives. I mean, that's obvious, isn't it? You know. And then when you ask them, you know, how do you see, what's your perception of your life? Have you been successful? I mean, for people like us, we would jump at the chance to say, well, we've underachieved or we weren't successful, which takes the heat off us. Other people wouldn't be so quick, I don't think. They'll say, well, I've been a success. But then if you started asking other questions about sort of something which happened in their past or something to do with their personal life where things perhaps didn't go quite so well, you know, as you say, it'll be quick to unravel before your very eyes. So it's a difficult one to actually pinpoint and measure. So
I think it's rendered difficult because if you look at something like emotional intelligence, right? Now, emotional intelligence, being aware of who you are and your feelings. Most people actually don't really have a handle on how they're really feeling and really what makes them happy.
But they'll be able to justify that.
But that's part of the defences and part of the justification and the rationale. But the point being that, you know, they really don't know what is, you know, a sense of success for them.
But wouldn't that go for everybody?
I can't possibly speak for everybody, but I'm just factoring that in, you know, because it's like you said, it's very difficult to nail this one and say, well, if you were to ask a lot of people, do you think you're successful? Let me try it with you.
Yeah, well, I'll be able to pick the things I would consider I was successful at, and sort of drop the things where other people would think, well, what about this? Oh, no. Well, I never wanted to be that anyway, kind of thing. So take a friend of mine who went to the same, let's say privileged schools as I did, and he ended up busking. Playing music and plays for a band, goes around playing for a band in up to now in pubs and stuff. And when he was a student, he used to be playing in the underground, one of these annoying guys making all that racket there, and playing for money because that's what he wanted to do. And he's smarter than me, which is saying something. And he could have done basically anything he liked. He went to a decent university, graduated without any problem whatsoever, and he could have gone the career path. But he never wanted to do that. He had a sort of this love of music up to now. He wrote his own music, did this, did that, played various musical instruments. Now, if I asked him, I said, how was your life? Success. I mean, he would say, yeah. I mean, he would probably then.
You have reunions with these guys.
Oh yeah. Not for a while, but yes, I do. And he would home in directly on something which he'd done, which other people perhaps hadn't, like written a piece of music and had it published, and it had appeared in
go around the world on the yachts and all.
Yeah, exactly. And he would come up with that justification, and then if asked about a career and a career path, a job will be something which gets you money for food, and that's will be the end of that conversation. Whereupon another guy from the same batch, if I asked him about that, he would now be, a senior executive, and his kids would be bankers, and his daughter would be a vet or something. The whole thing would be as you would picture him having done that when we were teenagers. And that would be his definition of success. Well, I've done what I wanted to do, even though I don't enjoy my job, even though life's a bit this and the life's a bit that. That's what I wanted to do, and he would therefore also consider himself a success. So that's how it is, isn't it?
So success for him is doing what he wanted to do.
Right. Right.
And having those options.
And if you sort of wanted to home in on it, he would actually come up with some achievement within that, which he'd done perhaps, which he felt was a marked achievement, something which was notable.
I think going to, you can speak on this subject far better than I can, but I think going to a good school gives you those options and gives you them perhaps more a better likelihood of being successful.
I don't think so. Not necessarily. I think you're open to more side roads. We'll get onto this in our next one when we talk about money. Having money before you start and things like that. Can have various different effects on people. A lot of them detrimental, and a lot of them fatal as well. So it's not all good.
No, it's not. It's the point I was making earlier about the veneer. It's the success stories are not always what they appear to be.
Yeah, I mean, if I looked at 9 people who I started school with, our school was divided into what they called houses. 9 people who started with me, 4 of them a day. Only 5 survived from those 9. So read into that what you will. That's more than perhaps the national average. At my age, 60, with a batch of 9 people, 4 are a done deal already. Okay, ranging from years from 50, 57 to 19. First one out the light, 19. So you just don't know. Success, I'm sure the remaining 5 all have success stories, and they would also have the unsuccess stories as well.
Okay, so looking at we mentioned love, being loved as a success.
If it's on your radar, let's say, for want of a better way of putting it, if that's,
well, I think most people like to feel loved, don't they?
Like to feel it, would they consider it a sort of a paramount to success? Not so sure. Difficult to say, really.
It's always hard to steer away from money on this subject, isn't it? I mean, because most people always equate success with financial success.
It's a safe haven, isn't it? You don't have to, you could justify a lot of things by going out to work, getting paid, and being able to do various things with the money and say, well, look, because I've worked, because I've sacrificed my time and been compensated for this, I've been able to buy this house, that car,
But
put my kids in that education, and as a result of that, I'm a success. I mean, a lot of people would be comfortable in that scenario.
I wonder how many people measure their success by what other people think of them. I don't know if I'm making myself clear there.
Yeah, well, so you would have your...
So they don't have the internal voice saying, I'm successful. They're feeding off others for their success.
Yeah.
And kind of that could potentially have, the effect of not validating the success.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And whenever I show up in a place I haven't been for a few years, and I say, well, and they all run to tell me, oh, your mate so and so. I say, yeah, he's doing really well for himself. Success. What's he doing? Oh, he's just done this or he's just done that. I think, well, good for him. I mean, and when I go to talk to the guy, his self-perception is somewhat different. He may have the new business, but he has loans up to his ears. So
it's the guy who drives up in the Ferrari or the Porsche, isn't he? But inside he's miserable as hell.
And people probably think he's a so and so as well because he's got lots of money, but he's all right.
But his self-perception will be a fraudulent one.
Not necessarily. I think a lot of people have a very accurate self-perception of how well they do. And when
you think so?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think when you meet, let's say you're in a pub and you meet a guy and he says, oh yeah, that guy you're talking to, he's got this, he does this and does that. And when you ask him, I say, well, everybody here thinks you're the bee's knees. You say, well, it's not exactly like that, and then he'll give you 10 reasons why his life or his string of successes are perhaps not as good as people have said.
You're corroborating what I'm saying.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it is a fraudulent kind of self-perception.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can work both ways. I mean, you can make yourself out to be a bit better, and you can also make yourself out to be quite a lot worse than perhaps what other people see.
But I would if I had to put money on that, I would say I bet you there's more people out there who have that fraudulent self-perception of success, which is generated by the need or the perception to be seen as successful.
And also there's levels. Levels. I remember once I was doing temping work. This was many, many years ago. Temping as in I didn't have a job and somebody would ring me up at 8 o'clock. Can you go to such and such an office and do 2 days work here? And I got drafted in to do 2 days work at a gas company, working on the old style of computers. And I had to sort of put people's bills into the computer and tick them off as having been paid. And when I went into the place, there was this guy who had a sort of a pipe here. And everybody said, oh, this guy, he's the man in the office. He earned £200 a year more than everybody else in the office. And, he had the look of the one who knew what he was doing. But he was just a low-level office job, temping work, secretarial work. But he was the man. So you can be the man at a much lower level. Yeah. And, and then, of course, you walk out the door and you don't compare to anybody else in the street.
It's amazing how we grow up with that kind of Freudian projection, where we project things onto people that are not necessarily there, and quite often they're not necessarily.
Yeah, but you have to.
Well, you don't have to.
Well, you do. I mean, you do.
I don't have to look at him and think, oh, he's the bee's knees, just because he's sat there and he's earning £200 more than me.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody wants you to. Everybody says, "Well, look, this is the guy. This is the guy. You look. Don't look at me. Look at him. That's the man you have to see. And I'm thinking, what's that dick got to do with anything? I mean,
Excuse the language. Yes.
I mean, because they're me being superior to everybody in that particular office. I mean, I walk in there, and then all of a sudden they're promoting this guy, which
Okay,
is the
but
point you're making.
Yeah, you're kind of overshooting the point here that I'm trying to make, which is we often label things onto other people and make them out to be something they're not. Like the guy who's in the car who's got a nice house, and we kind of shroud them with,
For what reason?
Bestow upon them success ornaments.
To get it away from us?
No, maybe I don't know. I don't know. What's the function of that?
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, that's the way I would interpret it. In the office, it was like, don't look at me. I'm not this guy.
Am I out to kind of have something to gauge myself by? I don't know.
I don't think people do. I don't think, I mean, you can look at your...
Well, they do. They do.
So?
Yeah, they say, look at him, and he's loaded, and we have these phrases.
Yeah, but you also self-justify why you wouldn't want to be like him. This is a big thing. Yeah, he's got this, but I wouldn't like to be in his shoes. And then you'll be able to
But it works the other way quite often too.
Yeah, but you'll be able to justify it. You'll always be able to justify not wanting to be somebody who was, let's say, more successful.
Like us.
More successful than yourself. You can always do it, I think. I think you'll always come up with something. Which makes
that's the psychology behind it, isn't it? The rationalization, the defense is all kicking in.
Yeah, but then you pick and choose, like which was our original point. Are you a success? Well, if you look at number 5 and number 8 and number 11, yeah, that's me. I'm got those ones well ticked. Have you got a career? No. Have you got any money? No. Did you do this? I didn't quite get round to that. So there's a lot of things you do.
Very vague.
Tailor-made.
Yeah,
a bit like going to the tailors and having a suit made for you. Good for you, but not good for anybody else.
I think the resolution to this is self-reflection and deep penetrating honesty with yourself and an emotional intelligence to really dig deep and ask yourself the questions.
Another thing which you wouldn't get round to doing.
Well,
think, I'll think about it.
It's up to our viewers, isn't it? How many of them can do that? And if you can, drop us a line.
Okay, so as a final point, then let's go to the youth of today. The youth, people who are studying now. What would be your advice? How would you tell them to work out a map of their lives to create success for themselves? What would you say to them?
I think I honestly, I think I would try to get across what I've just said. To be self-reflective and to dig deep and to not focus on what other people are pushing you towards and pressurizing you towards.
So look
honestly within. But I think that takes a lot of maturity and a lot of trials and turbulations in one's life before we arrive at that point, that station where we get off and we say, I've had enough of this bullshit. I need to change. I need to do something about it because, we get sucked in, don't we? We get sucked into conventions. We get sucked into.
So you would steer away from study hard, get a good job, work, keep your nose clean, blah blah.
Do you like studying? It's that searching.
And if they come back and say, "Well, my parents expected of me," what would you say to that?
What can you say?
Exactly. So there's a lot of conditioning there as well, which I think is another thing we'll get onto, education and what have you. So we're about out of time. Such a far-reaching subject, no?
Yeah. Well, that's it for today, guys. Don't forget, I hate saying this because everybody on the internet says this, but don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Yep, and we'll be back in a couple of days with Does Money Equate to Happiness? Okay, we'll be there.
Bye for now.
Bye.